I'm going to start then based on what you just said. Adam said just before I recorded, he said the episodes were very good. So here we are. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about 3 episodes of For All Mankind with myself and Adam and his peach. Is it peach, plum, strawberry? What juice have you got? Gatorade?
Vimto.
Vimto. We don't have that here.
Vimto.
Okay. Please check the show description for the link to our discussion about episode 1 of For Mankind, which was actually in the old apartment. So I've moved house since we last spoke about this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Episode 2 is about director von Braun, who opposes President Nixon's directive with dire consequences. I would like you to just throw your thoughts out there, and I'll just beat off you if that's okay. Or beat you off.
Yeah, sure. Beat me off, you will. Well, it's been a while since I watched it, so episode 1 I thought was pretty good. If not, it started out really well, and I just found that it went a little bit slow in places, but then overall it was a decent episode. It was somewhat, I thought, well, it was a bit patchy in places, and I was like, okay. That's probably what took me so long to get into another episode. So that's probably why I kept on putting it off a little bit, going, okay, it's good, but I'm not super enamored to go head dive into it, you know. But going into episode 2, I felt like this was a much stronger episode, which sounds kind of crazy considering that obviously we opened up with the Russians landing on the moon first and all this other alternate history stuff, and it's really cool. But then I found that episode 2, the pacing was really good. I felt like the content of the actual episode was more interesting. I guess it was more character focused in this episode, especially with von Braun and stuff like that. And alternate history wise, I mean, I know that he comes from, obviously he has Nazi ties and stuff like that, and
Third Reich.
They used Operation Paperclip, and that was a whole thing where they took Nazi scientists from Germany after the war and all this sort of business. And obviously you find that out later on when he's in, I guess, Congress or somewhere in Washington, getting a bollocking basically and getting torn apart by the people that want him out basically. But this was a really, really cool episode. It really got me back into the swing of things, and that's what I mean. I watched episode after episode. Then I went into I think I'm like halfway through 5, like I said to you before we started doing this. It's just, it's got me really back into basically wanting to watch more and more, because I feel like more connection with the characters. I feel the episodes seem to have more content and context to like what they're doing in terms of like all the history and the different ways they're going about it. And it's interesting to sort of look at different events now and realise this is what's now spurring on the space race. It's now just a continued thing throughout probably the entire run of this show. Basically, they're going to continue doing this, and I guess because what we did in our history timeline is just we went to the moon once and that was it. We won, boom, done, end of. No one's gone back really since to the moon, apart from obviously recently, but everything's more focused on space race and everything like that. I find that really interesting to see how the show's going to incorporate that into different points in time, because I know the show jumps sort of, decades or years basically in future episodes and seasons. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into that more.
Good. There's a couple of time jumps even in these 3 episodes that you've watched. But with episode 2, it's interesting how quickly they want to get rid of Braun, considering his achievement with designing the rocket. And it's all politics. Yeah. Whether the Russians at the end, where they like, well, we got a woman on the moon, so what are you going to do? That's like kneecapping everything. Oh, it's bookending everything that's just preceded it.
That's another cool reveal.
Right.
Another cool reveal.
And in real life, the government knew about von Braun and his Nazi ties, but they didn't do anything about it. Here, it's politically convenient to just get out of here. We don't need you anymore.
It's really cool to see that the government, they have a backup plan as well. So they went after the guy
Ed
to talk to him, basically, to talk to Ed and say, because they knew that kind of von Braun kind of screwed him over. So they've gone directly to him and gone, hey, we like that article you did. We like you spoke your mind. And they basically trying to arm twist him to like go in and like badmouth Braun in front of people. And so when that doesn't work out, obviously they have a backup plan, and obviously it's the stereotypical. It's an easy thing to do. Like, he was a Nazi. He was working for the Nazis, and it's an easy thing to do. To all of a sudden, besmirch his name even more and drag it through the mud and show pictures of like the concentration camps and look at all the bad things you did. You knew this was only half. Like it was a mile and a half away. You must have known. You must have known.
Right.
It was such a cool moment as well. It's like, oh, they had this all along. They were disappointed in Ed. Yeah.
It's a shame because Von Braun is sort of portrayed as an eternal optimist. And even in the court trial, it's like, we're going to do this, and we've got this Skylab, the big rocket he was talking about. I can't remember the name. I'm mixing it up for Skylab, but we've got this and this, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, but you let Jews die, so we can't abide by that now.
It's a shame because it's like a redemption story for him, but then it's just taken away from him. And I think I'll miss the relationship between him and Margot, who we got basically. Well, she got herself into the control room to get a job, and I like their connection. I like their relationship. They have the little moments looking into the control room from having like have a break or have a sandwich, and they're both just talking. I miss those moments
already
between those two.
It's cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed those because they were good sort of ways to look at it from their perspective.
Yeah. Do you remember in the last episode, it ends with Gene Kranz saying, well, how are we going to get them back to the moon? Sorry, back from the moon. Yeah. And Deke is like, oh yeah, oh shit. And then the beginning of the episode, they just all like fly the machine. It's like, whoa, and that's it. And you think it could have been a bigger deal, but really it wasn't. It was just, let's just reorientate the lander, and then off we go. Yeah. And there's no more to do with that. And I do remember reading on Reddit that some people went into the show with a higher expectation towards them exploring the science, and they didn't realize how character focused it was, which clearly isn't a problem for you.
No.
And then they cap it off with the Neil Armstrong thing, because this is the last time he's in the show, this episode. Spoilers. Okay. He's sitting in the barbecue with Ed, and they're talking about whether to cancel or whether to abort or not.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They're both reminiscing because he could have done it, and he's speaking to the guy who basically won it for the Americans, and he could have done it. And it's an understated moment, knowing what I know, and it will always, and it still is an understated moment because the show doesn't dwell on it. It's up to you to remember, in a way, that he's kicking himself that he was so close to achieving something great.
Yeah.
So this whole thing with the moon taking off, you'll find that the show makes you think, oh, this is going to be an interesting thing to focus on, and then they just skip over it. It's like the next thing is where the drama is coming from.
Okay, yeah.
So parts of me, like the other person on Reddit, have these expectations where the story is laying down these threads, and then they just mention it and then just move on because they've got other things to do.
Yeah.
Karen in this episode, because Ed has lost his job, so to speak, or lost his position.
Oh, yeah, it changed a little bit.
Right, and she's like, yeah,
she's always like nagging him, and he's just like fed up in his desk job. But she's probably quite content that he's in a desk job, nice and safe in the area. Like he's not going to go to Vietnam and die in a war. He's not going to go shoot up in a rocket and die in a rocket.
But she also knows his job so well when she's saying, well, if we're going to get this job, then we need to move to Hawaii. And if we're going to be in Hawaii, we need to, like, she's so married to not just him, but his career. And then she can also take the wheel, so to speak, and then drive his career, or drive him to the next destination in his career.
It's an interesting dynamic. It's because, like, it's a much different time, obviously. And I think it's not like people got married, and the women would just stay at home. That's what they did. And it was more focused on like the husbands being the provider of stuff. And they'd be solely focused on their career and like home life, basically, and providing for the husband when he came in or came home or whatever. But also being that supportive sort of backbone to the male, because they were big kids, especially the astronauts. They were like treated like rock stars back then. So they are just like big children.
Yeah. Don't forget, women like that didn't just stay at home. They had babies. They were told to make babies. that was their job. Stay home, have kids, and then look after them, and the men will do the real work.
Yeah. Yeah.
The gender dynamics, like they touch on it, and obviously, like I say, they bookend it with the Russian woman, and then episode 3 gets into it. I do want to say, unless you've got anything else to say about episode 2.
No, well, I felt bad for Von Braun in the end. He gets kicked from the whole department, from NASA basically. His picture's taken down, he walks away, and he's out of it, and that's even with Ed doing the right thing beforehand. And it's like, oh man, that's shit. So,
yes. Oh, there was something actually. I just want to riff off you with that. It's the idea about the price of progress. The cost isn't free.
Yeah.
And
I enjoyed that scene. I enjoyed that conversation when she asked him. She said, like, "Did you know?" I think deep down she knew that he knew anyway.
She's a woman. They've got to hear it, haven't they, Adam? You can't.
Yeah.
You've got to hear it from you.
I think she knew, but she wanted to hear it from him and out loud, and now it's been brought to the surface, and it's just a very cool, very interesting scene to watch between these two, because he obviously values her friendship and the relationship they have, and it's just he's torn between his work and then he's losing someone that he sees that respected him.
It's prodigy.
And that liked him, yeah. And it's like, man, that sucks. So not only does he lose his job, he loses like a friend and like you say, a prodigy. And it's just all in one shot.
Right. And what did you think about this idea that progress is never free?
It's true. It's 100% true, isn't it? You know, even though all that bad shit was happening back then, like the most advanced stuff we have always comes from when we have wars and stuff. All our advancements, they come from war, because we're always focused on like having the next best thing or being more ahead of our enemies. It's one of those things, and then there was always a price, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For that.
The two people this is what I want to end with. Thomas Payne, by the way, I didn't know if I mentioned this in the first episode, but he's a real person. Or he was a real person in real life.
Yeah.
And the guy who grills Von Braun was also a real person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was just some made-up person, but I googled it before we jumped online. And do you know who the actor was that played him?
I think I've seen him in a few things.
He's one of those guys who just acts in everything, or you see him in everything you think you do. He played Kivas Farjo in an episode of TNG where Data gets kidnapped and put in a collector's room.
Okay.
He's the guy who plays him.
I think he was in. I think it's the same guy. Yeah. He was in something I used to watch, like I think it was Warehouse 13 or something. He was in that.